tent fabric moved. Not from wind, from something pressing against it from the outside. Slow, deliberate, like fingers, dragging across canvas. And then I heard it breathe. Where people vanish without explanation, these mountains are older than bones, older than memory, and they remember everything. What I'm about to share with you are 10 accounts from people who ventured into that darkness. Some made it out, some barely did, and some brought something back with them. Before we descend deeper into these mountains, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Here at Chills from Reality, every story leaves a mark, one you might not forget. The sound of it moving over stones should have been peaceful. But as the sun dropped behind the ridgeline, Marcus noticed something strange. The forest went quiet. Completely quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just the creek and his breathing. He built a fire anyway, told himself it was normal. Animals sensed storms sometimes, but the sky was clear. Stars beginning to puncture through the twilight. He ate his dinner. Freeze-dried something. Couldn't remember what. The silence pressed against his ears like hands. And then, just past the firelight, he saw movement. Not an animal. Too tall, too still. He called out, asked if someone was there. The shape didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stood there, maybe 30 feet away, barely visible between the trees. Marcus grabbed his flashlight, clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, and there was nothing there. Just trees. Just shadows. He kept the light on for a long time, sweeping it back and forth. Nothing. He convinced himself it was exhaustion, his mind playing tricks. He crawled into his tent, zipped it shut, lay there listening. The silence was worse inside the tent, like being wrapped in cloth, suffocating. He was almost asleep when he heard it. Footsteps, slow, circling his tent, not the soft pad of an animal. Something heavier, bipedal. Marcus froze, held his breath. The steps stopped, right outside the tent door. He could hear breathing, low, raspy, like lungs filled with water. He didn't move, didn't make a sound. And then, whatever it was pressed against the tent, the fabric indented, slowly, like something was leaning its weight into it. Marcus felt the pressure against his shoulder through the nylon. Cold, so cold it burned. He wanted to scream, wanted to run. But his body wouldn't respond. The pressure released. The footsteps resumed, circling for hours. When dawn finally came, Marcus unzipped the tent. The fire had burned out. The clearing was empty. But around his tent, in the soft dirt, were prints. Barefoot, human-sized, but wrong. The toes too long, the stride too wide. And they circled his tent exactly 47 times. He packed up in 12 minutes. Didn't look back. Made love under the stars. Felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. On the third night, they heard singing. Faint, distant. A woman's voice. No words they could make out. Just a melody. Haunting. Beautiful. Rachel thought maybe it was another camper. Someone far off. But David knew better. There were no other camps. They'd checked. The ranger had confirmed it. They were alone out here. The singing continued, growing neither closer nor farther, just constant, circling through the trees. Rachel wanted to find the source, curiosity, or maybe something else. David stopped her. Something about that voice felt wrong. Too perfect, too sad, like grief made into sound. They went into their tent, tried to ignore it. But the singing didn't stop. Hours passed. Midnight. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., still singing, always from a different direction. Rachel started crying. She didn't know why, just felt overwhelming sadness, like the voice was pulling something out of her. David held her, told her to cover her ears, but they could still hear it. through their hands, through the tent walls, through their skulls. And then, just before dawn, the singing stopped, replaced by laughter, high, childlike, echoing through the valley. When the sun rose, they packed everything, started hiking out immediately. 2 miles down the trail, they found something, a small clearing off the path. Dozens of pieces of cloth tied to branches, faded, rotting. Some looked decades old, and in the center, a cairn of stones, stacked impossibly high, 12 feet at least. Rachel took a photo. The image came out corrupted, just static and shadows. They didn't stop moving until they reached their car. Rachel still hears that singing sometimes, in her dreams. In quiet moments, David refuses to talk about it. That night, around the fire, they shared stories, played music from a Bluetooth speaker, laughed. One of them, Kyle, mentioned he'd read about disappearances in this area. Hikers who vanished, never found. The others told him to shut up. This was supposed to be fun. Around midnight, they heard it, a voice calling from the woods, calling Kyle's name. He froze. The voice sounded like his mother. Exactly like her, down to the slight rasp she had from years of smoking. But his mother was 300 miles away, back home. Kyle stood up, started walking toward the voice. His friends grabbed him, asked what he was doing. He said his mom was calling him. She needed help. They told him that wasn't possible. That wasn't her. But Kyle pulled away, started walking into the trees. His friends followed, tried to drag him back. The voice kept calling, getting farther away, leading them deeper. One of the girls, Jenna, finally screamed at him, slapped him hard across the face. Kyle blinked, looked around. They were a quarter mile from camp. No trail, just dense forest. The voice had stopped. They stumbled back to camp, found their fire almost dead. Kyle sat there shaking, said he could still hear it. Faint, distant, calling his name. They didn't sleep that night. Kept the fire blazing, sat in a circle, watching the trees. When morning came, they packed up, started hiking out. 3 miles down the trail, they found a backpack, old, covered in moss. The name tag inside read Kyle Morrison. But Kyle was standing right there. The backpack wasn't his. The date on the tag was 1994. Kyle was born in 2000. They left the backpack where they found it. None of them go camping anymore. Probably just kids breaking rules. The sun was setting as she approached the coordinates. She smelled smoke, saw a faint orange glow through the trees. She called out, identified herself. No response. She moved closer, found a campfire burning, but no tent, no gear, no people, just the fire. And it was arranged strangely. Stones placed in a perfect circle, the logs stacked in a geometric pattern, symbols carved into the surrounding trees, nothing Sarah recognized. She called it in, requested backup. Her radio crackled, static, no response. She tried again, nothing, no signal, which was impossible. She was on a ridge, should have clear reception. Sarah decided to put out the fire. As she kicked dirt over it, she noticed something. The ground around the fire was warm, but not from heat. From something else, like the earth itself was breathing. She stepped back. That's when she heard footsteps. Multiple people moving through the brush, surrounding her. She called out again, demanded they show themselves. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Sarah drew her flashlight, swept the beam through the trees, caught glimpses, pale faces, too many to count, watching her from between the trunks. Not moving, not blinking, just staring. She backed away slowly. Didn't run. Rangers are trained not to run. Predators chase. But her heart was hammering. The faces followed, keeping distance, matching her pace. She walked for 30 minutes. The faces never left. never got closer, never spoke. When she finally reached the main trail, they vanished, all at once, like they'd never been there. Sarah made it back to her vehicle, called it in from there. A team went out the next morning, found the fire site, but no symbols, no carvings, no warm ground, just a normal clearing. Sarah transferred out 3 months later. She doesn't work in the mountains anymore. Father-son bonding. That night, Ethan woke up, heard something moving outside. He nudged his father. Tom listened. Footsteps in the snow, crunching, circling the tent. Tom grabbed his knife, told Ethan to stay quiet. The footsteps stopped. Right outside, they heard breathing, heavy, labored, and then a voice. Low, growling, speaking words they couldn't understand. Not English. Not any language Tom recognized, just guttural sounds shaped like speech. Tom unzipped the tent, shined his flashlight. Nothing there, just snow. Undisturbed, but they'd both heard it. Both heard the footsteps. Tom checked the perimeter. No tracks, nothing. Impossible. Snow doesn't lie. They went back inside, didn't sleep, just waited for dawn. Around 4 a.m., they heard it again. This time, the voice was inside the tent, right between them. Tom and Ethan both scrambled out, fell into the snow, looked back at the tent. It was collapsed, like something heavy had been sitting in the center. But there was nothing there. No shape, no weight, just collapsed fabric. They packed everything, hiked out in the dark, used headlamps, didn't care about the danger. When they reached the car, Ethan was crying. Tom called the ranger station, reported what happened. The ranger sighed, said they weren't the first. That particular area had a history. People heard voices, felt presences. The Cherokee used to avoid those mountains, said something lived there, something old. The ranger recommended they camp somewhere else next year. They never went back. The tradition died that night. That night she woke to the sound of someone crying. A child, sobbing, desperate. Claire sat up. The sound was close, maybe 50 feet away. She called out, asked if someone needed help. The crying stopped, then started again, farther away. Claire grabbed her flashlight, put on her boots, started walking toward the sound. She knew it was stupid, knew all the rules about not wandering at night. But a child was crying. She had to help. The sound led her away from camp, deep into the forest, always just ahead, always just out of reach. She walked for 10 minutes, 15, 20. The crying became laughter, high-pitched, manic. Claire stopped, realized what was happening. She turned around, started running back to camp. The laughter followed, gaining on her. She could hear branches breaking, something large moving fast. She burst into her clearing, dove into her tent, zipped it closed. The laughter stopped. Silence. Claire waited, breathing hard. Her flashlight died. Batteries shouldn't have been dead. They were brand new. Darkness. Complete. She heard something land on top of her tent. Heavy. The fabric sagged. Claire pressed herself flat. Whatever was on the tent moved, crawled, sniffing. She could hear it breathing, smell it, like decay, like rot. It stayed there for hours. When dawn came, the weight lifted. Claire unzipped the tent, climbed out. Her camp was destroyed, food scattered, gear torn apart, and on the ground around her tent, scratched into the dirt, were symbols. Crude drawings of eyes, dozens of them, all staring at the tent. Claire packed what she could carry, left the rest. She found the trail, hiked out in record time. Never looked back. The next week, she sold all her camping gear. She hikes only in groups now, only in daylight. Started moving toward the sound. They were both thinking the same thing. Someone was hurt, needed help. The scream came again, closer. They ran, breaking through brush, following the sound. It led them to a ravine, steep, rocky. The scream echoed from below. Jake called down, asked if someone was there. Silence. Then laughter. The same voice, but laughing. Connor aimed his flashlight down. The beam couldn't reach the bottom. Too deep. The laughter continued, circling them now, coming from multiple directions. Jake realized they'd been led here. Deliberately, he grabbed Connor, told him to run. They sprinted back toward camp. The laughter followed, growing louder. More voices joining, a chorus. They reached their camp, threw everything into their packs, started hiking out. It was midnight. Dangerous to hike in the dark, but more dangerous to stay. The laughter faded as they reached the main trail. By the time they got to their truck, it was silent. They drove home without speaking. 3 days later, a ranger found their campsite, called Jake, said someone had been there after they left. The ground was torn up, trees clawed, deep gouges in the bark, 6 feet up, 8 feet up. And in the center of their camp, arranged carefully, were animal bones. Deer, bear, coyote, arranged in the shape of a person, lying down, like someone sleeping. Jake asked if they caught whoever did it. The ranger said no one did it. The bones had been there for years, weathered, ancient, but they'd been moved recently, arranged. The ranger suggested they not come back. Circling her tent, Michelle assumed it was a bear, made noise, banged a pot. The footsteps stopped. She waited. Nothing. She unzipped the tent, looked out. The fire was still burning, but standing on the other side of it was a man, tall, thin, completely naked, staring at her, not moving. Michelle screamed, grabbed her knife. The man didn't react, didn't blink, just stood there. Skin pale, almost gray. She yelled at him, told him to leave. He tilted his head, like he was confused, like he didn't understand. Then he smiled. Teeth too white. Too many. Michelle zipped the tent closed, called 911. No signal. She tried again. Nothing. The man walked around the fire, toward her tent. Slow, deliberate. Michelle grabbed her bear spray, prepared to fight. The footsteps stopped right outside. She heard him breathing. Then he spoke. His voice was wrong, too deep, like gravel scraping metal. He said her name. Michelle. How did he know her name? She demanded he'd leave. He laughed, said he'd been waiting, that she'd finally come back. But Michelle had never been here before. This was her first time in this forest. The man said she didn't remember, but she would. Soon. He walked away. Michelle heard the footsteps fade. She didn't sleep, didn't leave the tent. When morning came, she packed everything, hiked out, never went back. 3 months later, she got a letter. No return address. Inside was a photo. Old, faded, 1970s maybe, a family at a campsite. And standing in the background, barely visible, was Michelle. Same age. Same face, but she was born in 1989. The photo predates her by a decade. She burned the letter, moved to a different state. But sometimes she dreams of that man. Still smiling, still waiting. 5 minutes passed. 10. Someone called out to Carlos. No response. They grabbed flashlights, started searching, found him standing about 30 feet away, staring at a tree, not moving. They called his name. He didn't respond. One of them, Marcus, walked over, touched his shoulder. Carlos collapsed, just dropped. They checked his vitals. He was breathing, pulse steady, but unconscious. They carried him back to camp, tried to wake him. He came to after 20 minutes. Looked confused, asked what happened. They told him he'd collapsed. Carlos didn't remember. Said he'd walked into the woods, saw something. A door carved into a tree, and it was open. He tried to look inside, then nothing. The others went to the tree, found it. A massive oak, easily 300 years old. And carved into the trunk was a door. Intricate, detailed, old, very old, but it was just a carving, not real. Marcus reached out to touch it, His hand went through. He jerked back. The others stared. They all saw it. The carving wasn't a carving. It was a door, an actual door, into the tree, into somewhere else. They debated what to do. One of them wanted to report it. Another wanted to explore. Carlos begged them to leave. Said something was wrong, that whatever was through that door didn't want to be found. They argued. Finally decided to leave at first light. They went back to camp, kept watch in shifts. Around 3 a.m. on Marcus's watch, he heard movement, looked toward the tree. The door was closing, slowly, silently, and standing in front of it was a figure, tall, impossibly thin, watching the camp. Marcus didn't wake the others, didn't move, just watched. The figure stood there for an hour, then stepped backward. Through the door, it closed, vanished completely. When morning came, they hiked to the tree. The carving was gone, just smooth bark, like it had never existed. They packed up, hiked out, made a pact never to speak about it. 2 years later, Carlos died. Heart attack. At the funeral, one of the others mentioned the door, said Carlos had been having nightmares every night. About that door opening, about something coming through. They stopped talking about it after that. The remaining 4 don't camp together anymore. Around midnight, she woke to scratching. On the ice, like someone dragging metal across the surface. She opened her tent, looked out. The moon was bright. She could see clearly. And there, in the center of the lake, was a figure. On their hands and knees, scratching at the ice. Rebecca called out, asked if they needed help. The figure stopped, turned its head, too far, 180 degrees, facing her completely while still on hands and knees. Rebecca backed into her tent, zipped it closed. The scratching continued, louder, closer. It was moving across the ice, toward her. She grabbed her phone. No signal. The scratching stopped. Right at the edge of the lake, right where the ice met the shore. Rebecca held her breath. Silence. Then she heard it on the tent. Scratching. The same sound. Metal on fabric. Slow. Deliberate. Circling the tent. She couldn't move. Couldn't scream. The scratching continued for hours. When dawn came, it stopped. Rebecca unzipped the tent. The lake was empty, but her tent was shredded. Long gashes in the fabric, deep, clean cuts, and in the snow around her tent were marks, like someone had been crawling, circling, over and over. But no footprints, no handprints, just drag marks, like something had been pulled. Rebecca packed what she could, started hiking out. She made it 2 miles before she realized something was following her, staying just out of sight, matching her pace. She started running. It ran too. She could hear it, crashing through the brush, getting closer. She burst onto the main trail, found a ranger patrol, told them someone was chasing her. They searched, found nothing. No tracks, no evidence, but Rebecca's tent was destroyed. The cuts were real. The ranger offered to escort her out. She accepted. As they walked, the ranger mentioned something. That lake had a history. 2 hikers disappeared there in the 80s. They were found 3 months later, frozen under the ice, positioned on their hands and knees, like they were trying to claw their way out. But they were facing down, clawing deeper. The ranger said locals avoid that lake. Say something lives under the ice, something that doesn't like visitors. Rebecca never went winter camping again, but sometimes, on very cold nights, she hears scratching. On her windows, on her walls. She moved to Florida last year. Somewhere warm, somewhere far from mountains. But she still hears it. Voices we trust. And maybe that's the real horror. Not the unknown, but the familiar. Twisted, used against us. So if you ever find yourself deep in the Appalachian wilderness, if you hear something calling your name, if you see lights where there shouldn't be lights, if you feel watched in the silence, remember these stories. Remember what happened to the people who ignored their instincts. Because the mountains are beautiful, ancient, sacred, but they are not safe. They have never been safe, and they remember everyone who enters, every single person, some who leave, and some who stay forever.